There will be no shushing of this conversation. AP photo, Michael Rubinkam. Earlier this year, Somerville Public Library's books. A week later, a woman accused Ansari of sexual misconduct. Without intending to, the Massachusetts library had inserted itself into the conversation about. The librarians running the group found it a perfectly natural conversation to be part of. We didn't want to overrule what the group had voted for because it's their book club and we want them to lead the direction of it, said librarian Cassie Gracer, who facilitates books. But we did want to be prepared. Responding to big cultural shifts is baked into librarians' mission statements. Responding to big cultural shifts is baked into librarians' mission statements. In Somerville, Gracer and Sundell Thomas include questions in their discussion guide such as, do you think that art can, or even should, be separated from the artist, in case participants needed prompts. Unlike a recent Saturday Night Live skit satirizing people's reticence to speak openly about the Ansari controversy and we thought we might lose a few people because of the book, but we got our highest turnout yet. Gracer said, people were interested in talking about the book but also in sharing thoughts about the controversy. It definitely changed the conversation. It made it much deeper. Librarians perennially find themselves at the center of cultural conflict, often pushing back against people's urge to ignore America's First Amendment right to free speech by censoring work they deem offensive on topics ranging from race to gender to religion. James LaRue, director of the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom, points to efforts to ban Harry Potter books based on accusations they promote Satanism to chronic calls to pull The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird for a diverse range of complaints about their depiction of slavery and discrimination, including the use of the N-word. The ALA maintains a running list of challenged books, titles the public has fought to remove by drawing on media reports and reports submitted by individuals. The ALA also provides confidential consulting and training to help libraries combat efforts to censor their collections. We don't believe in censorship. Instead of denying tough issues are out there, we should engage with them. We don't believe in censorship, that's our clear stance, said LaRue. We think instead of denying tough issues are out there, we should engage with them. But LaRue acknowledges looking at the list of 2016's top 10 challenged books, he noticed a curious first with Bill Cosby's Little Bill series of children's books. For the first time in the history of our office, as far as I know, a book was challenged not because of the content of the book but because people didn't like allegations against the author, he said. That trend expanded in 2017. Books by author Jay Asher and writer and producer Sherman Alexie, who have been both accused of sexual harassment, topped last year's challenged books list. But the challenges are complicated because, even before the accusations came to light, people lobbied libraries for a decade to ban the books for different reasons. For Asher's 13 Reasons Why portrayal of teen suicide and for Alexie's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian profanity and sexually explicit scenes. Generally, American librarians have no appetite for pulling controversial books of any nature from the shelves. Hundreds of public libraries circulate copies of Mein Kampf, Lolita, and books by writers whose crimes range from misogyny to murder. Instead of pulling from the stacks, librarians can combat cultural crises by adding to collections and the experience of patrons. Instead of pulling from the stacks, librarians can combat cultural crises by adding to collections and the experience of patrons, says Rebecca T. Miller, editorial director of the Library Journal. In a recent editorial, Miller offered a selection of titles to help young readers navigate sensitive issues, from interacting with people with autism to teaching kids about consent. Books such as Benny Doesn't Like to Be Hugged and What Does Consent Really Mean? She also asked peers to reassess displays meant to appeal only to boys or girls and not divide kids into demographics. Public libraries are pretty flexible organizations, so, while you might not see huge reactivity, you will see a responsiveness to different movements. Miller said. Last month, a rural Iowa library shifted how it categorized books after residents pressed to segregate titles with LGBTQ themes, which residents deemed potentially offensive, from other books. Officials for the library couldn't be reached for comment, and half a dozen librarians at other rural libraries either didn't return courts' calls or declined to comment for this story. A clear gap exists between the ALA's openness to discuss complex modern problems and the hesitation amongst some librarians to court controversy. KB Madewell, director of the Clyde W. Roddy Public Library in Dayton, TN, population 7,200, says the library strives to provide what the community is looking for without censoring materials. But when asked if the library has a role to play in tackling cultural problems, she hesitated a moment, then replied, "No, we don't go down that road." Being a small-town library, librarians insist the adventures of Huckleberry Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird will always find shelf space even if they have to fight for it. Harper Lee's masterpiece made ALA's 2017 list of most challenged books once again. But alongside it will be materials addressing modern movements, and titles from an expanding range of perspectives. "I think Huckleberry Finn is a good book and it shouldn't be removed," LaRue said. "But let's be honest, other good books, many of them written by Black Americans, have been written since. We don't have to remove books that people don't like. We can instead add more books to collections that reflect the consciousness of the time." Learn how to write for Quartz Ideas. We welcome your comments at ideas@qz.com.